Welcome to the VC3 News Update. I am Shanette Hackshaw with the top local news stories for today. Agricultural authorities and specialists from Cuba are now on a development mission to St. Vincent and the Grenadines with the goal of offering technical assistance in various areas of the country's agricultural industry. The delegation will be participating in a number of activities, including a windward tour that includes the Orange Hill Multiplication Center, VC3 Limited, a meeting with government representatives, the permanent secretary and senior staff in the Ministry of Agriculture, a CELAC team meeting at the CELAC Food and Nutrition Center to discuss the CELAC FNS plan, consultations with food producer groups, community farm visits, and a meeting with agricultural industry leaders. Deputy Minister of Agriculture, His Excellency Javier Francisco Rodriguez, Head of Division Carlos Alberto Alvarez, and International Director in the Ministry of Agriculture, Jose Antonio Casanas, arrived in the state on Wednesday, September 6. They were welcomed by the Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry and Labor, Suboto Caesar, and Ambassador Extraordinaire, the Republic of Cuba to this country, His Excellency Jose Manuel Ventura. The expedition represents the extension of cooperative and exploratory activities between the two nations in the agricultural sector that was started earlier this year following Minister Caesar's visit to Cuba. After all scheduled items are completed on September 12, the delegation will depart the state. The group from Cuba's visit is evidence of how closely both nations are bonded and united. It is critical that as the focal point for gender affairs or development, the Ministry of National Mobilization conducts a perception survey in communities before carrying out domestic or gender-based violence activities that are expected to curb the incidences of violence. This is according to the PS in the Ministry of National Mobilization, Marissa Finch-Burke, on this week's episode of Round the Table Talk.
So it's important to understand what those reasons are. And hence the reason what we have been doing as the Gender Development or Affairs Focal Point Agency in the ministry is that for every time we are about to do awareness and education on this particular topic, we first do a perception survey in the same community that we are about to go into, because it is critical. The people that you would want to come to a community meeting or something like that may not necessarily be the people who are perpetrators or relatives of perpetrators, etc. So we do the perception surveys where we go to popular spots within the community where we know you would typically get respondents on the street or on the block or by the rum shop, anywhere. And we collect a sample of the same information but also provide information for those persons on the spot. We use that same information and then relate it back at the community meeting level where we can engage persons in a more detailed way, but it helps us to also understand what is happening per community, because the same level of response or support or rehabilitation needs does not exist the same across all communities.
PS Finch-Burke said that the responses may differ in rural areas as opposed to urban areas. She said the ministry had to recently consider how they engage with men and ensure the development of boys to men.
And in recent times, we had to seriously revisit how do we continuously not just engage men, but ensure the development of men and the transition of boys to men, because we have to look at the preventive side, the supportive side, the rehabilitative side, and the developmental side. If we don't address all facets, it means that we are constantly putting a Band-Aid on a small cut, not knowing that there is a bigger thing at stake and we are not addressing it completely.
The ministry is expected to launch a men's engagement and development program that will target 240 males at the community level and 120 males at the secondary schools level.
We are launching our MEND program, MEND, which is our Men's Engagement and Development Program. It hopes to be a 3-month cyclical program. We are targeting 240 meals at the community level and 120 meals at the secondary school level, because we have to look at boys and we have to look at men. We have to also look at the life skills agenda in terms of how boys and men are socialized. What are some of the reasons why there is this disconnect between the issues that surrounding co-parenting, the issues around men not being great fathers at home in some instances, because it's not happening everywhere. There are still good men out there. However, we have to ensure that there is balance. We have to ensure that we have more great men in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and hence the reason we have to invest in this program.
Meanwhile, Kimia Glasgow of Kimia Glasgow Incorporated, who was also a guest on Wednesday's Roundtable Talk, said that there needs to be a more balanced approach, and the MEND project will create such a balance. She indicated that due to her upbringing, she had no choice but to be a feminist.
And I think it's going to help because from my point of view, I mean, I would call myself an accidental advocate because I engage with people using the town square social media. And I mean, in my family, I had no choice but to be a feminist, I think. And it was kind of strange to me when I started to express my feminist views that some people were completely surprised by some of the thoughts I was sharing about gender equity and that gender should be seen as equal and have an equal share of the pie and have equal access to happiness and freedom and all of these things, or what constitutes a healthy or unhealthy or abusive relationship, and looking at the characteristics of that. And even the idea that when you're having a conversation with people, people still think that violence or the threat of violence is an appropriate response. Say, for example, if your partner is unfaithful, that is the actual currency, that power is a thing, or even you were referring to financial abuse, that I know people where the one partner who's the breadwinner, ostensibly the male, would bring home the money, hand over something to his partner, that's for the kids, that's for the household, but then come back and ask back for the money and argue about it or disallow somebody from working.
Glasgow continued by saying that there needs to be a conversation on what is a healthy relationship.
So I'm so excited about this program because I think we need a re-education, a re-socialization, a conversation about what is a healthy relationship, because we've come out of the plantocracy colonial society where that society was all about violence, it was all about control, and we have inherited it. And you would have conversations with people and they would tell you this is the way that you deal with whatever the issue is. You argue, you fight, you wrangle up. If you meet your partner out with somebody, you scramble them up. That's the norm, and they don't see anything wrong with that, not understanding that this is something that we have inherited, that is a toxic mentality, that a lot of people believe in tradition because tradition is comfortable and change is uncomfortable. So people prefer to stay with traditional models, and if it's a power dynamic situation where one partner is the breadwinner, earns more than the other partner, and they use that as a form of control, that there's nothing wrong with that because that's how it should be. There should be a pecking order.
In more local news stories, today, September 8, 2023, is International Literacy Day, and the Ministry of Education and National Reconciliation is delighted to participate in this worldwide celebration. This yearly celebration, started by UNESCO, aims to draw attention to the value of literacy as the basis for ongoing education, individual growth, and society advancement. The emphasis of this year's theme, Promoting Literacy for a World in Transition, Building the Foundation for Sustainable and Peaceful Societies, is on how reading can improve lives and enable communities to realize their full potential. The Ministry of Education is dedicated to encouraging literacy and making sure that every student has access to high-quality education and a chance to grow as a reader. The ministry, in this vein, has planned a social media campaign as part of its International Literacy Day festivities to spread awareness of the value of literacy and to foster a love of reading and education. In the opinion of the Ministry of Education and National Reconciliation, this is a fundamental human right and a major factor in the advancement of sustainable development. Regardless of their backgrounds and circumstances, the ministry says they are committed to working towards a future in which every person has a chance to develop, learn, and excel reading abilities. And finally, in the local news stories, the warmest 3 months on record for our planet have just passed, according to the United Nations. We need to take precautions to safeguard our family and ourselves, since extreme weather events brought on by climate change can have an impact on our health. This weekend and the entirety of the storm season are expected to be warmer than average. Here are some health-related reminders and advice from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment. Stay hydrated, avoid sweetened and sugary drinks, wear light-colored or loose clothing, keep doors and windows open where possible, reduce outdoor physical activity, and protect your skin when going outside by wearing sunscreen. Those are our local news stories. Continue watching the VC3 News Update on Channel 114 for regional and international news.